The envelope was on the floor just inside the door, face down, slightly bent from being pushed under the gap. She almost stepped over it. Her arms were full, her key was still in the lock, and she was already thinking about dinner. She picked it up without looking and dropped it on the counter. It was addressed to someone she had never heard of. She almost slid it back under the door. Then she turned it over and saw the word, "Confidential," printed in red across the seal. And inside that seal, through the thin paper of the envelope, the outline of a name she knew perfectly well. She had lived at that address for 2 years. She and her husband Marcus had moved there in the spring, a second-floor apartment in a quiet part of the city, close to her office and not far from his. They had found it on a Thursday, signed the lease on a Friday, and moved in before the previous tenant's mail had stopped coming. For a while there was the usual overlap. A magazine, a utility notice, a coupon booklet, all addressed to someone named Allison Webb. She would mark them, return to sender, and drop them in the outbox downstairs. The name meant nothing. Allison Webb had lived there before them and moved on, and that was the whole of it. She and Marcus had been together 7 years. Married for 4, there was nothing wrong, exactly. No large fights, no growing cold. Just the ordinary life of two people who had stopped noticing each other the way they used to. Who trusted without thinking, which is the deepest kind of trust, the kind you don't know you have until something reaches into the room and closes a hand around it. Marcus traveled for work roughly once a month. He was reliable and punctual in most things. He remembered her coffee order. He called when he was going to be late. She had never had a reason to look too carefully. The envelope sat on the counter for 3 days. She tells this part differently depending on who she is talking to and how honest she decides to be. On the 3rd day, she opened it. She told herself it was because the mail had been sitting there unopened and it was clearly some kind of legal or official document addressed to someone who no longer lived there and might need it forwarded. She told herself a few other things too, which she later stopped repeating. The return address was for a firm called Halcyon Investigative Services. Inside was a cover letter addressed to Allison Webb, dated 4 months earlier. The subject line read, "Final Report, Surveillance File HWM0041, Subject, Marcus Hale." Her husband's full name, his date of birth, his current employer. She sat down at the kitchen table. The report was 41 pages. She read all of it that night. It covered 14 months of intermittent surveillance. Dates, times, locations. Her husband had been photographed at a coffee shop on Meridian Street on 11 separate occasions. At a diner in the East Side neighborhood 8 times. At the lobby of St. Agnes Hospital on 6 separate visits, once staying for over 4 hours. Each time he was with the same woman. The report identified her as Dana Reyes, 44 years old, a former marketing consultant now listed as unemployed. There were no photographs of anything inappropriate. No hotel rooms, no parked cars, nothing that looked like a secret life being lived in the dark. Just a man and a woman, meeting regularly over more than a year, in public places, often during weekday afternoons. The investigator's summary noted that the subject showed no evidence of romantic or sexual contact but that repeated and deliberate contact was observed and documented across the period. She went through 14 months of her own memory looking for the gaps. The coffee shop on Meridian was 6 blocks from Marcus's office. His Tuesday lunches. He had mentioned going to that part of the city for a good sandwich once. She hadn't thought about it again. St. Agnes Hospital. He had been there on a Wednesday in November. She remembered that clearly because he had come home quiet and said he'd had a long day, and she had assumed work. She had made tea without asking questions. She did not sleep that night. She sat with the report and the silence of the apartment and the specific feeling of a floor shifting under something you had believed was solid. In the morning she searched for Allison Webb. There was not much to find. A LinkedIn profile that hadn't been updated in 2 years. A Facebook account with limited visibility. And then, through a combination of the employer listed and a local newspaper archive, an obituary. Allison Webb, 48, had died in a car accident on the Interstate 14 weeks ago. She had been survived by a younger sister. She had worked in insurance. And she had been, according to a single line near the bottom, a resident of this neighborhood until her recent move. This apartment, she had lived here, she had moved, and then she had died, and somehow in the weeks between the report being prepared and being mailed, the address on file had been her old address instead of her new one. She called Halcyon Investigative Services. She reached a receptionist who confirmed the company had recently handled a file for Ms. Webb but could not share details with a third party. When she explained that the report had been delivered to her address in error, there was a pause. The receptionist said she would pass along the concern. No one called back. That left Dana Reyes. She found Dana Reyes online without much effort. A professional profile from several years back, and below it, buried in the search results, another obituary. Dana Reyes had died 3 months ago from complications related to a degenerative neurological condition she had been living with for years. She had died before Allison Webb. Both of them were gone. She sat at the kitchen table with the investigator's report and the 2 obituaries and a question that had no one left to answer it. And then she went to the bedroom closet, moved 2 boxes on the upper shelf, and pulled down the folder where Marcus kept his personal documents. She was not entirely sure what she was looking for. She found it anyway, a photograph tucked inside an envelope, inside a folder of old tax returns. Small, slightly faded, clearly from years back. Marcus, younger, in a white shirt with his collar open, standing next to a woman. Both of them looking at something just past the camera's edge. On the back, in handwriting she recognized as his, Dana, 2009. She waited for him to come home. She did not rehearse what she was going to say. She made dinner. She set the table. She put the envelope with the photograph and the investigator's report side by side on the counter, and she sat and she waited. He came through the door at 7:15. He kissed her on the cheek and started to say something about traffic. She put her hand on the report. He was quiet for a long time. Long enough that she stopped expecting anything to make this easier. Then he sat down. Dana had been his wife. They had married when he was 28, lived together for 3 years, and divorced at 31. Not from cruelty or betrayal but from the slow recognition that they were wrong for each other and had taken too long to admit it. He had never told Claire. He had kept that marriage so far outside of his current life that it had ceased, in his own telling of himself, to feel like something he needed to account for. About 2 years ago, just before he and Claire moved into this apartment, a mutual friend had passed along a message. Dana was sick, Parkinson's, advancing faster than expected. She had returned to the city for treatment and had no family living nearby, no one she could ask for much. She had only wanted him to know she was there. He had gone to see her. He had been going ever since. He had not told Claire because he did not know how to explain a woman he had erased from his own history. He had told himself it was a private act of care for someone he had once loved, and that telling Claire would require reopening a chapter he had spent years deciding was closed. He had been wrong to stay quiet. He said this without being asked. He did not know about the investigator. He had never heard of Allison Webb. When she told him that Dana had an older sister who had apparently hired someone to follow him for over a year, he was quiet again. He looked at the ceiling for a long moment. Then he said he thought he understood. Dana's sister had watched her ill, isolated sibling meeting an ex-husband in hospital lobbies and coffee shops over and over, and she had wanted proof of something she could not name. Something that would explain it or condemn it. The proof she got was a man who kept showing up. She kept the report. She does not know entirely why. It is not a keepsake and it is not evidence of anything she needs to hold over anyone. Both of the women whose lives run through it are gone. Marcus knows she has it. He has not asked for it back and she has not offered. What she is left with is not clean, and she has stopped expecting it to be. There is the lie of omission, years of a life he had quietly amputated before she met him, a marriage he had let her believe had never existed, 14 months of absences he had allowed her to fill in with ordinary explanations. That is real and it matters and she is still deciding what to do with it. And then there is the other thing. The thing that does not fit neatly into the story she had told herself in the dark at 2 in the morning with 41 pages spread out on the kitchen table. A man who showed up. Who sat in hospital lobbies for 4 hours on Wednesdays. Who came home quiet and let her make tea and said nothing because he did not know how to say anything. She has not decided what their marriage is, now that she knows the shape of it more clearly. She thinks that may take some time. The report is in the folder on the upper shelf of the bedroom closet. She moved the photograph too, put it in the envelope, put it next to the report, closed the folder and slid it to the back. She does not know if she will take it down again, but she knows it is there. # story notes. Fictional narrative.